Bienvenue mes amis, and welcome to this video presentation of the 3.1 vocabulary from our favorite textbook, Bien dit, Level 1. Today's vocabulary is a little bit different because it focuses on adjectives. French adjectives and English adjectives are a little different in that in English, each adjective only has one form. However, in French, an adjective can have as many as 4 forms. That's because in French, an adjective must agree with the noun that it modifies. So if your noun is masculine singular, your adjective has to be the masculine singular form. If your noun is feminine singular, then it has to use the feminine singular form of the adjective. If your noun is masculine plural, then it needs to use the masculine plural form of the adjective. And if it's feminine plural, it must use the feminine plural form of the adjective. So you see, it can get a little bit interesting. All right, normally French adjectives will form the feminine by adding an E to the masculine form. And then to form the plural, you simply add an S to the masculine singular form, or you add an S to the feminine singular form. Not always, but that's how it generally works. So we're going to go through a few adjectives here and hopefully let you see some of the different ways that those adjectives are formed and give you a better understanding of these wonderful French adjectives. So let's get started. Our first adjective is âgé, âgé. Âgé, âgé. Notice the feminine form is simply made by adding an E to the masculine form. I'll always put the masculine form first and then the feminine form. All right? And âgé, âgé means elderly. All right? Makes sense. You see the word age in there. All right? Let's move on to the second one. Bleu, bleu. Bleu, bleu. That EU makes that sound. Notice by adding the E in the feminine form, it doesn't change the pronunciation. So what could bleu, bleu mean? It means blue. All right. A close cognate. All right. We'll go on now to blond, blonde. Blond, blonde. Now this time the added E in the feminine form does change the pronunciation for the feminine form. And here's why. Whenever you add an E at the end of a word that has a silent consonant, as we do with blond, notice I don't pronounce the D in the masculine, but once I put that E after it, that E makes it okay to pronounce that final consonant. So I get to pronounce the D. So it's like the E gives the D permission to speak. So the masculine singular form is just simply going to be blond. The feminine form, however, is going to sound different because I'm going to get to pronounce that D now. Blonde. Blond, blonde. Which means, as you probably guessed already, blonde. All right, next one. Now watch how the pronunciation changes here, because not only is that E going to allow me to pronounce that N, but remember, anytime a nasal pair is followed by an E, and UN is a nasal pair, because it represents the nasal sound but whenever an E follows a nasal pair, the nasal pair loses its nasality. We pronounce it like we regularly would. All right? So in this case, the masculine singular is brun. The feminine singular is brune. Brun, brune. And that means brown or brunette. Moving on. Court, courte. Court, courte. Which means short. Now there's another word they use when you're talking about short being a person's height. Court and court are used to talk about, like if you have a short piece of rope or if you have a short list. It's what we use when things are short. When people are short, we use another adjective, and we're coming to that. So I'll explain that when we get there. The next one, fort, 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 which means strong. Next, génial, 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 génial. And that means great, like, oh, that's great. He's a great person. It's kind of like in the sense of awesome. All right. Next, grand, grande, grand, grande, which means big or tall. So if you're talking about a person's height, you could also use grand, grande. Next, intelligent, intelligente, intelligent, intelligente. It's a cognate. It means smart, intelligent. Okay. Next up, jolie, 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 jolie. And that means pretty. Okay. Following that, we have marrant, marrante, marrant, marrante. Funny. Okay. Number 12. Mauvais, mauvaise, mauvais, mauvaise. Bad. Next up. Whoops. I think we missed one. There we go. Méchant, méchante. Méchant, méchante. Nasty or vicious. There's a good old vocabulary word for you. Okay, following that, noir, 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 meaning black. All right, so that's our first color. Going on, petit, petite, petit, petite. And you probably already know the meaning of this because this word has worked itself into the English language quite extensively. It means little or small. And this is the word you use when you're talking about a person's height for short. A short person would be petit or petite. Next, vert, verte, vert, verte. And that means green. So our second color. Okay, number 17. All right. Now I said that most adjectives form the feminine by adding an E to the masculine form, but not all of them do. Here's an example of a different way of forming the feminine form. This is the kind where the masculine forms end in EUX, and when the masculine forms end in EUX, then the feminine form is going to end in EUSE. And normally these words are close cognates. Généreux, généreuse. Généreux, généreuse. That means generous. Next. Paresseux, paresseuse. Paresseux, paresseuse. Lazy. Okay, coming up now. Sérieux, sérieuse. Sérieux, sérieuse. Serious. Okay, going on. Now we're going to come to some adjectives that end in IF in the masculine singular form. And when that happens, normally the feminine is formed by changing the IF to IVE. And also these words are normally cognates. So we have actif, active, active. Next, Nope. There we go. Créatif, créative. Créatif, créative. Creative. Okay, going on. Now, when an adjective ends in EAU in the masculine, you're going to form the feminine by changing that EAU to ELLE. And here we have an example of that. Beau, belle. Beau, belle. And that means beautiful. Okay, you can even see the word beau in beautiful. Let's go on. Nouveau, nouvelle. Nouveau, nouvelle. Meaning new. Right, next up. These are adjectives where the masculine and the feminine forms are quite different. So you really need to learn these forms separately, okay, because they have very different kinds of forms, all right, such as blanc, blanche, blanc, blanche. Notice we just didn't add an E to the masculine form. It becomes a CHE. And notice also we don't get to pronounce this C, although we normally would, but not in this case. Blanc, blanche, meaning white. All right, coming up again, let's see. Bon, bonne. Bon, bonne. And that means good. Good. Next, gentil, gentille. Gentil, gentille. And you would think it would mean gentle, but be careful. It actually means kind. All right, now we've got gros, grosse. Gros, grosse. Fat. Next up, long, longue. Long, longue. Long. Roux, rousse. Roux, rousse. Red-headed. Vieux, vieille. Vieux, vieille. Old. Now we have some adjectives that just have a singular form. It's the same for both masculine and feminine, such as athlétique, athletic, or jeune, jeune, young. Marron, marron. It's another way of saying brown. All right? Mince, mince, meaning thin. Pénible, pénible. Tiresome, pain in the neck. Next, sympathique, sympathique. And that means nice. Sometimes it'll be abbreviated to just sympa. All right? Terrible, terrible. Terrible. And timide, timide. Shy. All right. That brings us to some nouns now. Les cheveux. Hair. Notice that hair is always plural in French. Un nez, un nez. Your nose. Un œil, un œil. Your eye. Les yeux, les yeux. Eyes. It's an irregular plural. Une bouche, une bouche. Your mouth. Une oreille, une oreille. Your ear. And finally, une tête, une tête.